I'd ask Sean Osborne to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the May 15, 2014 meeting of the Shawnee County Board of Commissioners. My name is Bob Archer. I represent District 3 and currently serve as chair, alongside Commissioner Kevin Cook, who represents District 2, and Commissioner Shelley Bueller, who represents District 1.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. First item, please.
First item is item 2, unfinished business. Number 1, consider approval of a request for proposals for security services at the courthouse.
Counselor?
Good morning, Rich Eckert, County Councilor. I was requested to draft an RFP for security services at the courthouse. It's just a fairly standard RFP along the lines of all the other ones that we send out, except that, of course, the specifications apply directly here. This particular RFP you have in front of you still has the old dates, so we would have to change the dates if we're going to send this out, but I can do that internally upstairs. And I think we'll probably have a little bit longer window to give anybody who might want to bid a chance to come in and look at things. But other than that, this is an RFP for security of the courthouse. There's a wide range of things here, and there's plenty of people in this audience who know more about it than I do in terms of the mechanics of it. But any questions that you have, I will endeavor to ask, or we can go to the experts.
Any questions or comments?
Not at this time.
I have a couple. First of all, does it cost us anything to issue an RFP?
Just my time, and that's 99% already done.
Okay, so there's really no cost involved.
Not to us.
Okay, and are we obligated in any way to accept a proposal that comes in?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so regardless of what cost advantages there may or may not be, any of the ins and outs of the proposal, we are not under any obligation to accept a proposal.
That's correct.
And this is similar to what we've done with Parks and Rec, going to buy a truck. I know we did it with JADO in the last couple of months. Commissioner Cook thought we should have an RFP for economic development, which we did, and Commissioner Bueller and I, of course, went along with that. It was a good idea and a good exercise. So that's all I wanted. Thank you. Are there other comments?
Good morning, Commissioners. Herman Jones, Shawnee County Sheriff. I come to you today on a concern of issuing with the point of RFP going out for security for the courthouse. Totally understand what you're looking at, at least trying to save some dollars for the citizens of this community there. But beyond money saved, there are some safety issues that I'm concerned about, at least for the staff that we have right here. And I've also prepared some documentation. Basically, been involved with the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office, has been involved with the screening of security screening here at the courthouse since 1997. And with that, then, with the law enforcement involved, we feel that the authority of a law enforcement officer does deter any type of crime or other issues there, and it also has quick response for issues that come up here in the courthouse. Over the years, our officers have been involved with breaking up fights, gang tensions that have been diffused, racial tensions that have been diffused, and emotional outbursts as we deal with here in the courthouse. I think we also know the Shawnee County Sheriff is dealing with people of all magnitudes that come through the doors here. There are plenty of good citizens that come here, but also we're dealing with the criminal element that comes in for their day in court. And for that, then, many a times that because of a possible disturbance or a possible issue that may derive from an outcome in a legal matter, there are judges that have requested the law enforcement to be on standby or at least be in the courtroom. So in that, some of the information you have right there, it just talks about when you have private security, a lot of times private security is dealing with loss prevention, don't necessarily have law enforcement authority. The items that we deal with in the court, or excuse me, not myself, but our security unit is dealing with legal matters, where there are some individuals that come in that may have to be taken in direct custody. And it may not be a point of going into custody directly to DOC, but there may be a DOC officer here, but we also augment those with the officers from DOC. Generally, they're bringing them over for court, but these are individuals that come in before they are actually taken into custody for DOC. Also remember that there have been several incidents that have gone on over the years, and I think you have, I've listed there, over the last 3 years, of just some of the incidents that have happened there. When we're talking about disturbances there, in 2012, there were 26 disturbances that were reported through our agency there. In 2013, there were 37. And in 2014, year to date, or at least through April, we've already had 23. So, and of that, our officers have dealt with making an arrest of, in 2012, 12 felon arrests here in the courthouse. In 2013, 26. And of this year so far, we've made 23. The trend is, as you can see, that we're having more frequency of individuals or incidents such as that magnitude. As I say, I believe a couple of weeks or so when we had the county commission meeting and this was brought forth in the public forum there, I believe that very same day in Las Vegas, there was an incident. I believe it's Las Vegas, but an incident of an individual that caused a disturbance in there where he ended up harming an individual in the courtroom, one of the court officers there. So it's not just our issue here in our community, but it's throughout the nation of the assessments that we need to look at as for security of the courthouse. And when we talk about the courthouse, we're talking about multiple entities of the government. So, where we talked about the district attorney's office, we talk about register of deeds, motor vehicle, and so on, beyond the courts. And in those situations right there, individuals can be emotionally charged. And as we know, particularly those of us in law enforcement or just life, more emotions, less critical thinking, therefore people act out, and then sometimes they recount on those situations and a little more remorse with that. But we're dealing with some immediacy. So one of the other items that we deal with of the different types of things that go on in the courthouse, I have a listing of there, just some of the offenses of just incidents where we require immediate response to that. I've listed those, but when we're talking about individuals who've been arrested and has harmed the officer and has drugs on their in possessions there. Individuals have made threats to individuals in the courthouse, if not for a judge. We've had medical emergencies there. There have been disturbances here. There have been times when individuals are arguing. A plaintiff may run across a defendant or so, and they're arguing right there in the courthouse or in the hallway. A judge may be out of the chambers and encounter the individual, and a disturbance causes right there. So there are times when an officer is right there to make that to intervene or mitigate that situation there, so people are not harmed in that right there. On and on, we could talk about certain incidents. I've placed that in there for you so you can look at it, but sometimes things are not reported, not put on a report, and I think a lot of times that's because of the deterrence of what having a law enforcement authority in place. And as well, there's some instances where officers respond to certain things or deal with something before they get out of hand. Thus, people are less likely to be injured, harmed, or hurt from that right there. When we look at the situation here of back in 2009, where our court dealt with multiple gang members that were involved in a heinous crime, and of that, where there was a prosecution and a guilty plea of that, the defendant in that case threw an object at the jurors. From that right there, that caused somewhat of a melee, if you will, where that individual had to be restrained. At the same time, our officers were able to protect the judge, court reporter, and other officials of the court and get them out of that right there. I don't know if we were to take and remove our deputies from this type of scenario or so, where that would go. If we have individuals that are not of a law enforcement authority, but simply of a security, where would we go for that right there? My biggest concern, obviously, is just converting those type of things to a security type of guard. I believe Commissioner Archie, you brought up about security over in Topeka Municipal Court, the situation over there. From my understanding, what we have over there is you're right, there are security individuals over there, but they also have officers that are commissioned, and basically the non-commissioned or the security folks deal with administrative side of that. So they're dealing with the judges, or they're dealing with employees. They're not necessarily dealing with the common public. The officers deal with those types of things right there. So I think from all of this, with Sergeant Acree and his crew, I think we've done leaps and bounds to bring this environment to a safe environment for anyone that breaks the threshold of this building right here. Also, I'm concerned that if we were to look at an RFP to bring in someone beyond the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office, I think there's an issue that we have to look at with the current language of the memorandum of agreement with the FOP, in that if you look at section 42-18, it basically says civilians, non-sworn, or contracted employees will not assume the duties of FOP-covered employees in such a way to cause displacement or layoffs of such employee as a direct result thereof without first meeting and conferring with the FOP. Further says the terms displaces as used in the subsection means the removal of an employee from a regularly scheduled shift and or position and replaced with a civilian or non-sworn or contracted employee. It goes on, but basically it's just saying that I think we have an issue there we have to deal with on a contract when we're talking about replacing the sworn officers in there with a contract or of a security. I know we have a contract of those types of things. There's one signed sometime back in 2010, but I know so as well there was I think we looked at this one time back in May of this year, and we were concerned about the effectiveness and maybe some of the same thing I've heard here about budget, of cost savings, of having maybe shutting down one of the entrants. I think I raised the issue at that particular time about when we do that, we bottleneck the entrance for deliveries, for other employees beyond, or judges, employees, as well as individuals that come in here to do their business, but there's also that other element that we have to deal with, and I think we need to separate that. If we have DOC that comes in, they have a special interest they have in what they bring in, but that's someone in custody, but not everyone is in custody that comes into here and the disturbance caused. So there, eventually, we could, essentially could have an issue at the front door and a bottleneck of bringing those types of things and individuals in here. I think lastly, of any and all, I talk about, we look at if we say we want to be efficient, we may look at an officer that's manning a station at the front or on the east side and may not be doing anything at that particular time when people go by. But there is a reason for that. Like I said, it's kind of like a deterrent of crime. You could put a patrol car out on the street, and as long as people see that reduces speed, and people probably will not do certain things. I think that has the same thing effect of what we have in the courtroom. But yet and still, when something happens, we have immediate response. I think if we remove police officers or our deputies or anyone from the courthouse right there, if we have blue coats, if we say, security, non-law enforcement individuals, and an incident happens, what is the response time? If we want immediate response, we're going to go for the most immediate law enforcement. This being in the city of Topeka, we're probably going to have a city officer respond or so. If we were looking for a deputy respond, because this is a county-owned building there, that's going to take some time because they're out on the streets and they're trying to come in here. With our policies that we have, anytime you have a disturbance there, because of safety, which is very is ultimate, we're going to have more than one officer respond because of this right here. So when we have that, now we've taken 2 officers off the streets to deal with something that a security guard probably would not be able to deal with. Any and all these type of things, I think I lay that for you just as a consideration and a strong consideration of those type of things. And then I guess I look at this as well as, is there really a cost savings? If we take and we look at, I believe you have some numbers on our deputies or so, of what the cost it is, a little more than $400,000 of what it takes for employees to be here for the year-round and all the other employees. That figure can fluctuate simply because we work on a bid system. Every 4 months, an individual, an officer can bid, and depending on seniority, depends on whether someone comes in or not. So we could have some officers that's more seasoned that has a higher cost that's working in here. But then again, we could have not say a rookie, but a younger officer that probably doesn't have a salary that comes in here. So that salary and that budget can fluctuate in that right there. Anyway, I have concerns. I have real concerns with that. And then I go one more step. When we have a security council that's here for the courthouse, it involves employees as well as the sheriff's office there. And they work through, on a monthly basis, they work through issues that are here. And I think that's been working just fine. But at the same time, back in May, I think there was an assessment that was requested on security. And I think that assessment also showed that this would not be a cost savings for the citizens of this county if we went to a security like that. So I think that's all I have to say. I'll open up for any questions if you have, please.
Any questions?
I have none for this one.
Are you sure, Sheriff, are you still shorthanded in the field?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
It's my understanding, and I spoke to Betty, and I think your numbers, are there 8 officers
Yes.
assigned to provide courthouse security? And the latest salary and fully allocated cost is over $600,000 for personnel, and then we've got another $100,000 in equipment maintenance and so on. So the total cost is over $700,000 for courthouse security.
And when we're talking about 700, that's divided out. We're just dealing, Shawnee County Sheriff's Office deals with the personnel and the security for that right there.
Right.
Okay.
But the total expense, fully
Right,
allocated
okay.
expense is $700,000. So I think what you're saying is that we should not, we've got a budget item or a cost of over $700,000, and we shouldn't even consider an alternative.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just
Okay.
saying that this is something to consider from my standpoint.
no, and
If we're going to respond to those type, if we put someone in there, we're now going to have another expense of having officers respond to that versus having someone already here. That expense is already incorporated into that.
Understand, okay. Thank you, Sheriff.
You bet.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Evelyn Wilson. I'm Chief Judge of the Shawnee County District Court. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I have some written testimony.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I speak on behalf of all the judges and the court employees here. We process thousands of cases every year. And as the sheriff was speaking, I was thinking that the danger that the court employees are in is so consistent and so constant that we become used to it. We have in my own office, which is a suite of offices, so if danger comes in, there's one panic alarm under my assistant's desk. I don't have one under mine, but my court reporter is there, and we have a system that if I ask for a certain kind of pop, that means that somebody should call security. It spikes every once in a while. And that happened this morning, in fact. I was concerned about my testimony here before you commissioners on this issue, because this is the first time I've testified as Chief Judge. And my court reporter came in and told me that there was someone who wanted to talk to me. And he seemed quite agitated. She didn't know what to do. And I said, well, I'm Chief Judge, and so I bring him on in. And I talked to him in my conference room, and it occurred to me that I wondered what I would do if he attacked me, because I'm not an expert in security. I've had some CPR, but I don't think that would have come in handy. And he was approximately 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighed about 350. And he was agitated about how his cases had gone and the fact that his child had been taken away from him and his parental rights had been terminated. I spoke to him for a while and he remained agitated, and I listened to him and told him what I thought I could do and what I thought I couldn't do. And before I finished the conversation, which was going fine, he didn't try to hurt me, I looked up and I saw the deputy standing there looking into my conference room. The deputies know the people that come into this courtroom. They know that from their experiences in the community. And I and the other people who work for the courts feel safe because of them. They can react immediately to a situation. And the level of danger that we have here sometimes is hard to explain, it's hard to appreciate. It seems so theoretical as we talk to you up here. But I assure you it was not theoretical to me this morning when I was thinking about what I would do if he did attack me. And the ability to arrest someone immediately is something that the deputy sheriffs have, and I would submit to you almost certainly private security would not have. I looked at my last report this morning that I had. It's from May 1, and it shows that right now we have 830 pending felony criminal cases in this court. And that's fairly typical. Sometimes we have more, sometimes we have less. And those are divided among 6 other district judges, those are assigned cases. Misdemeanor cases are much more numerous. They're not assigned to a judge. They're done by way of dockets. But we have 830 assigned felony criminal cases, and I just looked up this morning the first 5 that were assigned to Judge Anderson. They have the following charges: battery to a juvenile correctional officer. The next one is aggravated battery, then possession of cocaine, and the next one is aggravated battery. The immediacy element is so important to our feeling of well-being, that those deputies are there, and they are there right now. And when they come, they know what to do because they have training for emergencies. They have arrest authority. And that arrest authority means the difference between being able to have someone understand that they can be taken into possession and taken to jail immediately, as opposed to being ordered to go somewhere to wait while we get on the phone or the walkie-talkie to get somebody like the sheriff to come over and help us. During that delay, it's much more likely that they're going to become restless, that they're going to cause more of a problem, that they are going to cause a scene or other damages, leave, and then they would have to be chased down. I mean, those are expenses that probably are something that it's difficult to quantify, because it's difficult to know what would happen if the situation were different. And I don't know that I would have even talked about what happened this morning, because it's just typical. And we would have just gone on about our day as we do. Judge Yeoman walked off the elevator one time into the middle of a melee. He was a person who was trying to separate an angry family from a shackled defendant who apparently had done something to someone they loved. And I think at that time the officer went to the hospital who was trying to guard him. But there's also an effect that's less obvious if we don't have someone with immediate arrest authority and who's there right now, because I truly believe that my authority in the courtroom would be more vulnerable. A security officer keeping the peace simply does not have the same chilling effect on a potential troublemaker as someone who does have arrest authority would have. And I think that there are a lot of people who would understand that. They would they take the temperature of the room just like anybody else. There are times when people might think that there's an empty hallway, or there might be an empty, dark courtroom, but we have trials here. But trials only take place when all other forms of dispute resolution have failed. Probationers meet their supervisors behind closed doors. We have conciliators talking to upset divorcing spouses behind closed doors. Research projects, judges work on reports, and court reporters work on transcripts, all behind closed doors. But it's a potential for danger that frankly just exists all the time here on the 3rd and the 4th floors. A change to private security is not the place to save money, in my opinion, and I believe that the court personnel is very strong in its position in support of our opposition to private security. Even if you can. We believe it's a bad idea. We believe the risk is too great and the sacrifice is too much. any money you would save would be dwarfed by collateral costs, some of which are impossible to quantify. Law enforcement doesn't just keep the peace and enforce the law. They protect us. They make us feel safe. We do feel safe because of them. When bad things happen, and they have, and they will, I know they will risk their lives to control and minimize that damage. I don't think that's in a security guard's job description. Thank you for your time and consideration, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Questions, comments?
Well, I just don't know that I can pass up the opportunity to question Judge Wilson. I mean, this is kind of turning the tables, so to speak. You know, so many times she's gotten to question me as I'm making my argument. Judge, if we could talk about not just the third and the fourth floors of the courthouse, but the whole courthouse. The court really envelops the whole courthouse, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think we're certainly an important part of it, but we're not all of it. I mean, the treasurer's office, of course, is on the first floor, and the district attorney's office is on the second floor. You know, I think their prosecutors would feel especially vulnerable. I don't want to speak for the district attorney, but many, many times I have watched a courageous assistant district attorney argue that the person who's standing 10 feet away from her in shackles needs to go to prison or needs to have his bond revoked because, and of several enumerated reasons why they're not safe to the community, they have not complied with their bond conditions or probation requirements, and that person needs to go to jail. I don't care how nice he is.
But if we were to
That
look
poor
today,
Pierce.
just today, moments ago, I was down the hall with Judge Johnson's courtroom. Today is a child support contempt docket. We have, the hallways are filled. Commissioner Archer, if you were to go down the hallway, it is elbow to elbow filled. And when there is a person who is in contempt, they're immediately taken into custody. And we have to have a person who has those arrest authorities. A private security officer would not have those arrest authorities. And our courthouse sheriff's officers are acting as that role of a bailiff. If you would think of a traditional courthouse or a court procedure, you have your bailiff who's acting as that armed arrest authority individual. Brian Cole is with us in the courtroom, in the commission chambers, director of the Department of Corrections, and we have 34, 36 individuals at the Shawnee County Department of Corrections right now serving contempt citations. Just down the hall from that is Judge Schmidt's courtroom. She deals with the termination of parental rights. Having served as a guardian ad litem for 10 years on those child in need of care cases, to where I'm making a recommendation that a parent forever lose their child. It's nice to know, it's reassuring to know that there is a sheriff's deputy there, not just for my safety, but for everyone's safety. We deal with divorce cases, and I know that the judge and the sheriff talked about the criminal. And the criminal element, those criminal cases, those are important, but those aren't the majority of the cases that we have in Shawnee County. We have our domestic cases. Sometimes the saying is, criminal cases are bad people that are trying to put on their best face. They're wanting you to believe that they're not a bad person. A divorce case are good people on their worst day. Their emotions get the better of them. Tempers rage high when you're talking about the breaking up of a family unit, any family unit. People that would have never otherwise acted in that way strike out in a moment's notice. And again, those sheriff's deputies are patrolling the second and third floors, the fourth floor. We also have Shawnee County is unique in all the counties in Kansas in that we get the review of school payments, and we have those cases that other counties don't. And when you want to talk about school finance, that's a touchy issue for both parties across the state lines, and people are prone to having an opinion one way or the other as to what those courts and what those judges are doing and what those plaintiffs or defendants in a civil case are doing. But the court does envelop the whole courthouse in many ways.
Yes, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I did
Yeah.
not mean to
No.
disparage those in the
Yeah.
basement. They can be very dangerous, and mental illness you aren't just seen in care and treatment cases. They're seen in all cases, it's not just that we happen to have gang members or dangerous people in the courthouse. We order them to come to the courthouse. I had that hearing that the sheriff was talking about where there were 9 people charged with committing the same homicide. I had 5 of them in my courtroom at the same time. 4 of them were being tried for a preliminary hearing, and 1 of them was testifying. The one who was testifying tried to run away, and that was the least tension for me in that room at the time. I wasn't worried about him leaving, for goodness sake.
We
And
also-
it was, but we had ordered these people to come to the courtroom through a subpoena, and so, we ask in a way for
And-
that.
And Judge, when you have an issue that arises and you need to have that arrest authority, would a security officer have that ability to have that immediate arrest authority?
Most of the time not. Unless they also happen to be a law enforcement officer, and so incidentally, they have arrest authority. I know that, at least I've been advised that over at the city, they have, within the city courtroom, they have some retired police officers who they have hired, I believe, as security. So in that case, if they also have it, but as a security officer, I looked up there was an ad for security in the paper. I looked it up. What are the requirements? And one of them was the ability to react in an emergency. Well, I would submit to you that screaming and running away is a reaction to an emergency. But, and that's not to say that their training is not more than that. But law enforcement officers have hundreds of hours of training, not just in what constitutes an appropriate reaction to a violent situation, but they know the law. They understand what happens when people have a mental illness, and that generally you don't challenge somebody who has schizophrenia. You speak gently, and they understand that they understand those situations and people in the community and how their interactions have happened in the past, and what they should do if there's a situation of mental illness or violence or drug abuse.
Commissioner?
Just have some questions. Judge, you had, well, first I want to state that Kathy Linhart is a member of the Security Council. She's a valuable member of the Security Council, and we appreciate that. And the Security Council and the Commission is concerned about all security at buildings, and we are striving to improve on that with the cooperation of multiple departments. But the fact of the matter here is the courthouse, as you said, has a level of activity that is different than some of our other buildings. And, how many cases did you say, just for felonies?
830 felony cases only, and that doesn't, of course, count the misdemeanors or the child support.
And those jurors that are attending expect to be safe when they're serving their civic duty.
they don't have a choice
Right.
to be here, right?
Yes.
So oftentimes when you come to the courthouse, you're paying taxes, you're serving on jury duty, or you're in trouble. It's not a happy place most of the time.
We have
I mean,
adoptions.
adoptions,
Yeah.
and that's a happy day, and you can tell that when you're in the
Yes.
hallways. You really
Right.
can. You
Yes.
can. So I agree with your comments about the sheriff's office are experts, they are professionals, they are trained, and I'm going to say I'm not going to support this request to go out for RFP. I think we have a combination of private security in the evening and then the sheriff's office during the day. I think that's a good mix. Looking back in some other, the history of the county, it's gone back and forth, and I think we have a good fit currently. So I'm gonna support not going out for RFP.
Thank you, Judge. The same fellow that talked to you talked to me this morning also.
Oh, okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public?
Commissioner, if I may.
Oh, yeah, sure, Commissioner.
You know, I've struggled with what to say, and I know that this is not something that you would have just thrown on the commission agenda in a lark to see what if. I know you well enough to know that you think things through. I think that Shawnee County is really blessed at this time with the commissioners that they have, and that we all bring to the table different life perspectives. When it comes to a matter of accounting, and I'm not an accountant, accounting standards are something that I'm learning, but it's not something that I was trained in. Being an attorney is something that I was trained in. I've had the opportunity as an attorney to travel the state of Kansas, trying cases in Johnson, Wyandotte, Leavenworth, Douglas, Jefferson, Jackson. And across the state, you will see different types of courthouse security. And in our smaller communities, it might be just a security officer, a sheriff's deputy, who is wandering the hall. One lone sheriff's deputy. But they also represent a much less frequented courthouse. In Shawnee County, I think that we need to think back that it wasn't that long ago when our federal courthouse was under attack. And I think that was an experience that you commented that you lived through on that day. We have those same tensions here in the Shawnee County Courthouse. We have that when there's a tax foreclosure, we have the treasurer's office, the payment of taxes. Larry Ma does not usually have happy customers coming into. Now, usually they're happy when they leave that the line was short. He's done an excellent job addressing that.
That's true.
But still, there's that tension when you enter. There's been a lot of comments about the Topeka Municipal Court. I serve in the Topeka Municipal Court. Our firm has the contract for indigent defense, and so I am there every week, multiple times a week. And yesterday alone, I was there 3 different times. On the City Hall side, there is a security firm. And so if you came into the City Hall side to see the city manager, that's private security. However, if you go into the other side, on the TPAC side, those are law enforcement officers. They carry a badge, a gun. They have the ability to make that immediate arrest. And we haven't, during the city council budget hearings, there was a discussion about outsourcing those to private security. And there was a lot of discussion on why that would be a bad idea. You talked about the RFP and going out for an RFP. And you know, any other matter, I would have agreed with you in a heartbeat. There's no cost in an RFP. We don't lose anything. This is unfortunately a matter that I have to disagree. And I think that the cost of human life over the cost of the savings is too great. And for that reason, I cannot support the request.
Well put, Commissioner. I appreciate your comments. I guess I need to remind everybody that this came up because the sheriff is understaffed. And this was an effort to free up officers to go to the field. And I think as a commission, anytime we have an expense of $600,000-700,000, we need to look at it. On the other hand, sometimes the status quo is the preferred way to go. And accordingly, I'm not going to make a motion to approve the issuance of an RFP because it wouldn't be seconded. So, next item on the agenda, please.
Item 3, consent agenda.
Comments or questions on the consent agenda?
I have no comments or questions.
I have none, Adam. Move approval.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Bueller to approve the consent agenda as presented, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item 4, new business. A, County Clerk, number 1, consider all voucher payments.
Mr. Chairman, this morning we have vouchers that total $685,152.89. Of those vouchers, our primary big budget items are our capers, which was $277,000. Also, we had our payments to the holding accounts of $70,000, our Blue Cross Blue Shield payments, our Chevron payment for our energy savings. Of note, though, John Knight's Office of the Parks and Recreation had $104,239.98. But there is no issue with those vouchers. I could not see anything that is out of line or inappropriate. And so accordingly, I would move for approval of the vouchers.
He's going back in the hallway. You can't see that, but John Knight is going back in there.
Was that a second, Commissioner?
Second, yes.
All right. Motion made to approve the vouchers as presented by Commissioner Cook and seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
There are no correction orders today. Item B, Health Agency, number 1, consider authorization and execution of contract C-194-2014 with Patricia Donovan, registered dietitian, to provide dietitian services in the WIC program when other professional staff members are out of the office, at a rate of $28 per hour and paid by the WIC grant.
Morning, Commissioners. Allison Alejos, Health Agency. This is in fact a contract renewal with Ms. Donovan, and we're asking if we could go ahead and get that renewal so that we have some additional folks in the office that can help during staff absences. The cost for this service is completely covered by a grant.
Questions or comments for Allison?
I don't. I would move for approval of the contract.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook to approve the contract, seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Allison. Next item, please.
Item C, corrections, number 1, consider approval of request to advertise and fill a soon-to-be vacated social worker MSW position at a salary including benefits of $39,133.20.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Cole, Department of Corrections. Before you is a request to fill a soon-to-be vacated position of social worker. With mixed emotions, after 39 years of service, Tim Switzer has decided to put up his notebook and decide to retire. It's tough to replace staff like that. I can always fill a position, but you can't replace Tim. I am very happy for him. Well deserved. I've been very vocal in the community with the boards I've been on, and both here and in the public, regarding the impact that the mentally ill have on being incarcerated in the criminal justice system and in the jail. This is a very critical position that we have in the Department of Corrections. We only have a 4-person staff of mental health. The impact that Tim and this position has on the youth in this community has been tremendous. We could not function and serve those in the juvenile detention center or the adult detention center with mental illness without this position. We couldn't do it. It is $39,000 and some change, I believe, to fill this with benefits. We have the money. The reason I'm asking for it to be filled beforehand, it will take us, a week to post, a week to do interviews and things like that, but I also feel the value of this, whoever gets hired, the value of being able to work with Tim at least a week or two to be able to see the function, the regulations that the Juvenile Detention Center has to operate with KDHE, JDAI, American Correctional Association, and so on. So we do have the funds. They have been budgeted and were approved earlier, so I do hope that this could be approved. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions or comments for Brian?
Commissioners, you may not know, but Brian also has been serving as the representative from the Department of Corrections for the creation of a mental health court. And so I wanted to thank Brian publicly for his work on that, as we do try to address the rising mentally ill rate within our Department of Corrections. This is a problem that is not going to just go away, and it does need to be addressed as our mentally ill rates do rise within the Department of Corrections, and this is a needed position. And I would move for approval of fill the position.
I second.
Motion made to approve by Commissioner Cook and seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0, and I'd like to add my thanks also, Brian. Thank you.
Well, me too, thank you.
Sorry. Next item, please.
Item D, audit finance. Number 1, update on expenditures and revenue.
Good morning. Betty Reiner, Financial Administrator. I am here with our monthly report. This is our financial overview report through April 30th of this year. I will start out by looking at total revenues. And you can see on this chart that our total revenues through April 30th, $49,472,000. Our budget for the same time period is $47,590,000. And in 13, for the same time period, we had $45,510,000. This chart shows the different categories of revenue that we have. The blue, as you can see, the majority are property taxes. The red are special assessments, other taxes, and then other revenue. If we look at this, and this is the total that I will go into the detail of the different categories later. But if you look at this, our actual to budget, we are over budget for our revenues through April by $1,879,000. And as I always do, I'm just going to tell you the percentage of that, because that sounds like a large amount that we're over budget, which it is. But it is 1.9% of our estimated revenue for the year. So even though that is a large amount, it's a small percentage of our budget. If we look at just the month of April, we are over budget for the month of April by $700,000. And I'll go into detail about where that comes from. Okay, next we'll look at property taxes. These numbers are exactly the same as they were last month, because we had no property tax distributions. Our property taxes are $949,000 over budget. Same thing with the special assessments. They're the same as last month because we did not have any tax distributions. They are under budget $224,000.
Betty, excuse me.
No,
Yes.
Commissioner.
Can you give the public an idea of what special assessments, what that includes?
Yes. Okay, these are taxes that are assessed, or assessments, I guess is a better word. They are when a developer goes in and develops a property for it can be streets, sewers, or the most common. Those the county can get involved in that, where the developer goes in and has all of these costs. The county actually finances those through a temporary note until all the costs have been expended. Then we go through the process of actually dividing this up among those property owners for each lot. And they're assessed a certain amount, and then that is over a period of time. That assessment, that property owner owns or owes the county that assessed amount each year for a period of the assessment period. So that is what this special assessment is. It's not actually a tax as much as it is an assessment for those improvements to their land that has been spread over a period of time.
Thanks.
But they are collected
By
as
the
part
county.
of the tax process. Okay, then we have other taxes, which there again, did not change because we did not have a distribution. These other taxes are, excuse me, over budget by $348,000 for the year. Then we go into our other revenue category. This other revenue is kind of broken down between property-related fees, which would be like mortgage registration fees, planning fees, filing fees, those types of things. Then charges for services, which would be our Parks and Rec services, services that the Sheriff Department has, or the detention facility. And then we have our miscellaneous, just miscellaneous revenue of the county within there. This, our year-to-date for these categories, we are $805,000 above budget for the year. Of that, property-related fees are actually under budget by $233,000. That is mostly in mortgage registration fees. They are down this year, and that's one of those things that's dependent on when properties and mortgages are filed. So that could just be a timing issue, but that's where it is so far this year. On the charges for services, year-to-date, we are actually up $122,000 over budget, and that is, so far, that's primarily in Parks and Recreation fees that are up this year. There again, it can be a timing issue. I think last spring was not a very good spring for those types of revenues. And then the largest amount is in miscellaneous revenue. It is actually over budget by $916,000, which all of those lumped together gives us our over budget of $805,000. Just for the month of April, we are over budget by $700,000, and the majority of that is a defeasance that we had during the month of April, in the amount of $503,000. So that really is the biggest portion of not only the April, but the biggest portion of our actual to budget year to date. Okay, now to go on to the expenditure side, you can see that our expenditures year to date are $31,572,000 compared to our budget of $33,415,000. So our expenditures are under budget by $1,843,000. And there again, I'll give you the percentages because the fact that we are under budget on expenditures by $1.8 million is wonderful. But we need to look that is 1.9% of our total budget for the year. So it kind of puts it in perspective that it's less than 2%. So some of that can certainly be a timing issue. If you look at this compared to 2013 in this same time period, our expenditures in 2013 at this time were $35,019,000. So our expenditures are down 9.8% from April 30 of last year. So that is significant. When you look at our expenses are down almost 10% based on the same time period as last year. If you look at just April, our variance to budget, actual to budget just for the month of April, we are over budget by 186,000. But there again, that's 0.2% of our budget. So a lot of that can be timing issues. You know, if something is paid in April this year, paid in May last year, you know, that type of thing. So those are our total. If you look here, this is our expenditures broken down by categories. The blue is the largest category. That's public safety, judicial, and emergency services. Then the red is public works. The green is public health and human services. The purple is recreation and culture, which includes the Parks and Rec and the Expo Center, a few other allocations. Then we have our debt service, and then the orange on top is our operational services. And then here is just a chart of our year-to-date expenses and how those numbers that I just gave you how those are broken down between the different categories as a percentage. 44% of our expenditures were spent on public safety, judicial, and emergency services. The next highest would be on recreation and culture, followed by our operational services, then public health, public works, and the smallest is debt service. So, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Betty?
Betty, as always, thank you very much for this presentation. I think that it's good for us to keep in touch with how we're doing, and as things, I mean, things can change in a month's notice
Yes.
from being, you know, up or down. So I appreciate the updates.
Thank you.
Couple of things. First, we would expect expenses to be down because we were forced to cut budgets and lay off employees this year. So we would expect expenses to be a lot
Yes.
less than last year. So I did want to point that out. I watched the city council meeting on Tuesday night, and they did a financial presentation too, and we may want to sue them for plagiarism because, boy, their presentation looked awful familiar with what you've been doing for months and months. So anyway, thank you again, Betty. It's appreciated. Next item, please.
Item 5, Administrative Communications.
Good morning, Commissioners. Randy Luby, Parks and Recreation. Just wanted to remind you, the public and the media, that we do have a press conference this afternoon for the introduction of the USSSA World Series that'll be coming to Topeka this summer. So invite anybody and everybody out for that. Thank you.
What time and where's it going to be?
That's a good point. 1 o'clock at the Betts Family Sports Complex, and we're looking forward to hosting the event.
Good.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you there, Randy. Are there other administrative communications?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm here on behalf of the East Topeka Community Development Corporation, and I came today because I wanted to find out through Mr. Cook if they made any decisions on the Abbott Center yet.
Not yet. I think that there are still under consideration. I've been working very closely with Mr. Knight, and I can't speak again for the other commissioners, but I know that I've been working very closely with Mr. Knight to look at the options that we have with the Abbott Center, and I think that if you were to contact him, he would be happy to give you an update as well. So, thank you.
Other communications? All right. Commissioner?
Commissioners, I wanted to thank Tom Vlock and Betty Griner for making themselves available last night for the Joint Economic Development Organization. I know Tom didn't get his chance to get up and make any presentations on bridges. It was a great presentation last time, so City Council must have been satisfied with it. But again, thank you very much. I know that that's kind of above and beyond what they would typically do, and I appreciate them being there last night. I know that there were quite a few City Council members that weren't there, maybe due to other obligations, but hopefully The ones that weren't there will add their input as to how they want things to develop in economic development, even when they can't be present personally.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bueller. Next item, please.
Item 6, executive sessions.
I don't believe there's a need. We are adjourned.